County, but they have been on the scene actively for a good long time. And we're happy to have them to visit with us this morning.
We're glad to be here.
Alvin, why don't you tell us how you came to Grant County? Why you came, when you came?
I came to Grant County in 1922. We needed more land to farm. Grant County was a good prospect. Land was cheap, plenty of water. We came out here, I came out here with horses and wagon, brought the machinery and implements and things out. My folks came out in a Model T Ford, and my half-brother, Arthur Newby, they built a house in the northwest part of town up at Old Brewers. They lived in a tent till they got the house built. And we, what you said to ask me?
Well, why you came, and you told me that. And when, and you told me that. Okay, Irene, how did you get here?
Well, we was living at Copeland while Dad built the house out here. He came out here in 1916 and bought the land. Then we moved from Buckland to Copeland while he built the house out here on the place. And we came out in May 1920. And we moved out with a tractor pulling the wagons with furniture and all of our belongings. And Mom and I and her sister came out in a surrey pulled by a team of mules. And that was a hot, dirty, dusty trip. And when we got out here, why, it was late at night. And when we got here, the mules got scared after they pulled that surrey all day. They still had pep enough to get scared and try to run off. So, but that's the way we came. And Dad had built the house.
Who were your parents? Let's get that on the record.
Mr. and Mrs. C.F. Patterson, Pat as he was called, and I had a brother by the name of Kenneth, and then we just us two kids, and Mom's youngest sister lived with us for a while, and then she worked for C.H. Benny for quite a while when Harold was born, and she worked for several different people.
Why don't you tell us what the prairie looked like when you got here, before it was all turned into wheat?
Well, when we first came out, we came out in May, and then shortly after we got here, Mom's mother took sick in eastern Kansas, and we had to go back there. And we was back there till, well, Mother's mother, grandmother, Lingwood, died July the 4th. So shortly after the funeral, we came home, and when we came home, the prairies were just covered with a yellow flower that was kind of like a cosmos, and it was yellow with little, it grew about this tall, and they were just covered, and as far as you could see was those little yellow flowers. And several years ago, over here by the Mormon church, there's a vacant lot there. And there was those same flowers was growing there, and they don't seem to grow every year. And I've been told that they grow from every 5 to 7 years before they. I don't know why, but after you smell that wind, or hot wind comes off of those flowers for several miles. They don't smell very good, but a few of them doesn't. But it was gorgeous. Just that they were kind of a golden yellow or orangey yellow for miles and miles and miles, and that was in July 1920. And I never have saw them that way, but just about 2 or 3 times since. Because I don't know why you just don't see them. They just don't grow. So look for them. You'll see them. It's about time for them to grow again, because it's been about 5 years now since they was over there on that lot west of the Mormon church, and there might be some more come up there again.
Well, you let us know. Well,
you watch for them. I got nothing to tell you.
Okay, your father ran a thrashing machine all over this county.
Yeah,
And-
he run a thrashing machine with a big Avery tractor, and he thrashed for down in the southwest part of the county for the Kepleys and McGilvery's and I don't remember Wingers, and I don't remember who all he. Cause I wasn't too old. I don't remember too much about that. And but when we was living at Copeland, he went back to Buckland and thrashed at Copeland, came on out here. Then when we got out here, he still went back to Copeland and thrashed. So my dad, through the summer, was gone a good many days, but he always come home over the weekend. And it left Kenneth and I and Mother to run the farm. And my mother always having eye trouble. Through the bright of the day, she never got out of the house. So it was left up for Kenneth and I to do the chores and the things around the farm.
Did you do any farming? I mean, crops?
Me?
Well, your family.
Oh yeah, when Dad got the sod broke out, land broke out. Well, there was some land broke out when we came out. And when he got it broke out, yeah, we farmed corn and oats and wheat and crookneck Milo. We didn't know anything about this little short, nice Milo they have now.
Hasn't been invented yet.
That old crookneck Milo, it went up, grew up taller than you was, and then the head bent back down. I ought to brought that head I had up home that's lost all the grain that we found among Alvin's stepfather's things. Oh, that was something to pick up when it blew down. And we raised a big garden, canned our food, a lot of it that we could.
And we have here in the museum another chore that you had to
Oh yeah.
manage. And we're happy to have the churn that belonged to Mrs. Patterson. And you might demonstrate how it works, Irene.
This varmint, and I'll call it that, was one of the things I really hated. It was my job to churn, and Mother always managed to fill it about half full of cream. So you brought the dasher clear up and down, so you kept that cream stirred up. And sometimes that went on for 2 or 3 hours. So you can see why I didn't like it. But it just seemed like if now we found out that cream, if it's kept at a certain temperature, that it will churn readily. But we didn't know anything about that. When we got ready to churn, regardless of what the temperature was, we churned butter. So that, and I was glad to give this churn to the museum.
To get rid of it.
To get rid of it, to get it out of my house, and let other people see it.
All right, Alvin, did you get in on breaking up the prairies?
Sure did.
What?
When I came out here in 1922 and we settled out west 5 miles to farm, there was all prairie between here and there.
What kind of implement did you use?
Well, for the first 3 years I farmed with horses and mules. And then in 1925, I bought an international tractor from Ben Oliver. He just went in the implement business to Oliver and Mahan. And this tractor had angle iron lugs, 1530. They called it McCormick Deere at that time, later IHC. And we had 2 15-gallon tanks on it, one for water and one for kerosene. We also had a gallon tank on the tractor. We put gasoline in and we cranked the engine and let it run till it burned up that gallon of gasoline, then we'd switch it over to kerosene. After it run a few minutes on kerosene, then we'd switch on water. And we had 3-bottom moldboard plow to turn the sod over.
Well, did you enjoy that, or did you have some reluctance to break out the prairie?
I never had any reluctance to break it out, and still don't have.
Okay.
It's
yeah.
improved the country.
I agree. How about going to school here? Did you go, you were out of school when you got here, weren't you?
I went through the grade school and high school at Byers.
Yeah.
Byers, Kansas, Pratt County.
Well, I might mention too, where we lived was out here above the railroad bridge east of town, out here northeastern town. But when we moved out here, there was no railroad bridge there, so we watched that get built. But when we went to school, my brother and I went 2 miles south, down, about a half mile west of Ulysses Cemetery, because it was in the old brick schoolhouse. They moved old Ulysses and they left the schoolhouse there. They didn't move it, and it finally fell down before I got here, and they built a little white building, which is now the garage at Della Rickson's home. And that was a little white building that we went to, and my first teacher out here in 1920 was Mary Frances Hickok, and then the next year we had her sister Helen, and then we had a lady by the name of Mrs. Brown, and then Lolita Weeby, Pearsall Weeby, and then we had Jenny Hampton. And that was in grade school, and then I went through high school here. And first year, my first year in the high school was the second year the building had been used, the one that was torn down. And the old Ulysses had a debt on it, and this debt had not been paid off. And my dad's land was unfortunate enough to be in that district, so my brother and I couldn't come to town school because we was in that district and there was a debt and they forbid it.
Okay, then, did the debt get paid?
Yeah, the debt, I was married in 29, and I don't remember just when the debt got paid off, but it got paid off sometime in the early 30s, because my dad come over one time after he paid his taxes, and he was so happy because he paid off his last debt on the old Ulysses debts.
School district.
School district debts. I don't know whether it's all school district or what it was, but I don't remember that. But then he didn't have to pay no more old Ulysses debts.
Okay. Can you tell us anything about growing up in Ulysses? What kind of recreation you had, and any school escapades?
Well, we had a very small school, and there wasn't very many things going on, and about our biggest thing was a big picnic dinner the last day of school when all the members would come in, and we never had Christmas programs because we didn't have a schoolhouse big enough to permit us to have any school programs. So we had very few school programs. We used to play marbles at noon and recesses, kick the can, ante over. That was about the limit of our school activities.
Okay, how about high school?
Well, I didn't participate too much in the activities of high school, but my brother and I had to go home and milk a bunch of cows and feed a bunch of hogs. And I rode a horse to high school, and I would ride my horse up to the livery barn, and the livery barn was then where the Ideal Food Store is now. And I left my horse there and walked the rest of the way to high school. So I really didn't participate too much in any activities.
Okay, how did you two get acquainted? You remember the first time you saw her, Alvin?
That was shortly after I came out here, I think. I'd see her when they'd come to, her folks would always come to town on a Saturday night. That was about the only activity there was. People would all come in town on a Saturday night, and she was running around with all the rest of the girls. I don't know why I singled her out, but I guess some reason, unknown.
Well, he seemed to know more about me than I knew about him.
What did you do when you were going together for recreation?
Well, we'd drive to Dodge City and Garden City to go to the restaurant and go to the movie.
Go on picnics with a bunch of our friends. We went to
Two Buttes.
several times. And there just wasn't too many things around here for recreation, and you kind of made your own.
We had an open air theater here, when I first came here in 1922, it was where the international shop is now.
No, the other one was before that. One over west of the, over there south of Windholz's.
You weren't old enough to go to that one, that I went to.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we had two of them then.
Two theaters. Windholz had built this wagon box out here. Had the theater over here where Bo Crocker was, on the west side of Main Street.
Yeah, where the old theater used to be.
Who had the other one?
Well, I don't remember for sure who opened it up, but Windholz, Kurt Adair run it for a long time. And I don't know whether he owned it or not. He might have.
How about tent shows?
Well, we used to have several little dog and pony circuses that come into town. And they'd have maybe an elephant, and they might have a lion in a cage, and a bunch of little trained dogs and little trained ponies. And there was one circus outfit that used to come in here. I don't remember what it was, but they used to turn. They had a little Shetland pony. I don't remember what that little Dickens's name was. But anyhow, they turned him loose down here in the lake and draw, and he always run with my dad's cattle and horses. Of course, he'd come up to the house to drink, and he was a trained pony. Well, I could ride most anything that come along, and I'd catch him up and ride him. But when he took a notion that I had ridden him long enough, he just gets started running real fast, and then he'd put his head down and stop. And you didn't stop 9 times. I got where I got smart. When he got to running fast, well, I got wise to him too. I'd lock my feet around him, and he couldn't dump me off. But the Walker boys lived over there, and my brother. It was funny to see them get dumped. But he was pretty clever. He was a clever little outfit. But he was trained to dump the kids when they rode in a circus. He was a lot of fun.
The Art Names shows came in here in the 20s.
Do you remember any of the people in them? Was
Well-
Doc Milburn in them?
Who?
The fellow that played on Gunsmoke?
No, I don't remember him being in it. I don't remember for sure. Who all Art Names and his wife and some of their family was the main ones. I don't know whether they had very many others in their cast or not.
I don't remember just who all was in there. I remember Art Names and his wife and some of the characters, but to remember their names, I don't.
Lester Adair married one of the Art Names' sister-in-law.
But I don't remember what their names were.
Okay. You were married in 1929?
Right.
What kind of a wedding did you have?
Went to probate judge at Pratt and got married. There's no... they didn't have home weddings then much. Very, most of my friends just went off to probate judge and got married.
It was the chivalry that was the main event.
Tell us about the chivalry.
They ran us. We dodged them for about a month, and finally they caught up with us. We had a basement out west there we lived in, 26 by 32, nice basement, and we kept dodging them all the time till one evening we came to town and ate at the restaurant. The restaurant was over there where the city hall is now, and Jay Wheeler came in there and sat down, and he was going to not let us get away. And so I had a good friend by the name of Fred Miller. He came in there and asked me if I'd like to go home cleaned up, and I told him I would, and he said, well, just leave your car where it's at. He said, I'll drive my car out here in the alley. That's where they have the window now for the city hall, collect the money. And there was a door there, and we got up, and there's a bathroom back there, so Jay thought we was going to the bathroom. And while we was back there, we went out, got Fred's car, and he took us out home, and there's quite a hill out west of our house there, valley, basement. So we came walking in there and got in before hardly anybody knew it. So then we could go clean up. About 50 people there, I guess.
What did they do? I don't think we've ever had anyone describe a chivalry on this
Oh, they usually have to get a whole bunch of cans and put rocks in them, and they always had to have a shotgun with the shot leads taken out of it. And whatever they could do to you, they done
What
it.
did they do to you? Short sheet the bed, or?
If they could get you outside, they'd take you and put you in a horse tank.
Put you in the horse tank, or they'd take you one way and your husband the other way. And what they done, my brother was in on this, and a couple of cousins of mine. They'd come out to the chivalry, and so of course while we was entertaining our friends out in the other part, they went back in our bedroom, and I had made the mistake of buying about 5 packages of little gold safety pins. So they found those safety pins and some straight pins, and they put a bunch of rocks and stuff, I don't remember what all they put in there, on top of the mattress, then pinned the 2 sheets together. Well, we worked about 2 hours getting our bed so we could get in it, because there wasn't no other bed in the house presentable to get into. And I knew who to lay that on. But we survived. And they always expected a candy bar from you.
Cigars.
Cigars, which we had. So we got that over with, but we should give them a lot of misery.
I remember, I think it was Ralph and Louise Kepley's chivalry that I went to, and after all the tricks were played and all the candy and cigars distributed, then we played round games outside. Did you remember the Jolly as the Miller Boy and
Yeah.
Skip to Maloo?
We used to go to parties out in the country. My brother and I went out northeast of town to several of the farm homes, and in the summertime when it would be warm, and I don't remember who had the Victrola, but we used to have an old Victrola that we wound up and put records on. We played with those games. Yeah, I can remember those. We had a lot of those.
All right, then your children are Harold and Marcella is our camera person this morning, and she's doing an excellent job in this series. We're real proud of her.
Standing over there with a grin on her face, looking at her mom and dad like the cat that eat the canary.
When she was a little girl, I'd went to town. And, she wanted to go with me, and I wouldn't let her. So she run off, went down the road about a half mile. Irene finally caught up with her. She was walking down the road. She said, "Daddy go to town, Marcella go too. Daddy go
Oh,
to town."
that was out there at the
Marcella go
side of the basement, she said that.
too. Well,
And it was just a little short time before Harold was born. I walked down there after, and I found a little switch somewhere along the way. And she run fast enough, because I couldn't run very fast, she'd run fast enough just to keep ahead of that switch. She, yeah, Daddy go to town, Marcel go too.
Okay, then tell us about the beginning of the dust storms, Alvin.
you really want to know?
I really want to know. Our great-grandkids are not going to believe this. We've got to have it on the tape.
Well, the first one we had that came in, we had a rural mail carrier, Ernest Gull. He carried the mail every other day, and he came by that day, and there was a storm coming up from the north, and it turned black. And Ernest finally, we stopped at our mailbox. Finally, he came in into the basement there and got out. We all went in the basement, and it turned dark. I asked Ernest, I said, "What is this, the end of the world?" And he said, "Well," he said, "it could be." So we had a telephone, and he called up his wife and told her where he was. But it had just total darkness. You couldn't see your hand in front of you.
And then it started bad and got worse.
Well, it kept on for about, I guess, about 10 years. But the wind was down on the ground, digging in them days, and a high wind. It was dry. It blowed all the way from Texas to Dakota, if wind ever gets to blowing and the same situation exists, there'll be dust storms again like there was then. We had chisels. We take in grater blades, take the moldboards off of the listers, and took grater blades and made chisels, put on place of moldboards. We chisel the ground up, and we bring up dry clods to try to stop it from blowing. But we had lug tractors along about that time, and we had to go around the land on our farming. We didn't have power lift to lift our machinery up. And you could see about every track that the lug tractor had ever made would blow out. And them tracks would still be there. You could find everything that was ever lost on the prairie, including horseshoe nails.
And arrowheads.
And arrowheads.
Yeah.
Old pairs of pliers and horseshoes, whatnot.
Guns.
A lot of people hunted arrowheads in the 30s when the ground blew bare, and a lot of good collections were made here. Some of them have gone out of the county, regretfully.
Too many.
Okay.
We didn't think much about it at that time when we broke the sod out. We didn't have time to pick up all them hairs. And now, close to my place out northwest there used to be an Indian camp, and there was beads and things there when I first came here. The ground wasn't broke out, it was sod. I could have picked all that up, but I didn't have time.
Who had time to do anything like that?
Didn't think of it being antiques sometime.
No, just had to get the ground plowed.
Oh, yeah.
In 1937, in April I think it was, there was 9 days and nights that the wind never let up. And you could barely see the sun in the daytime. We lived in that basement, and of course we had the windows all taped on the north side, curtains hanging up there. But I'd take a fly sprayer that we spray on the cows when we was milking them, and I'd spray the room. The dirt would get so bad, mist in there, you couldn't sleep, wake you up. I'd spray the room, then we could sleep for about an hour and a half, and I'd have to get up and spray the room again before you could sleep.
Remember any other dust storm events?
Well, I'll tell you, those dust storms, one I remember in particular, it's on Sunday afternoon, I don't remember just the date, but it came in from the northwest, and it was all rolling and a-boiling, and it was really beautiful. Royal Gray's got some pictures of them, and you've got some. To stand and watch that and see those big columns of dirt, just a lot of little columns all along the front. And it just looked like they were each one an individual whirlwind. And they were just loaded with dirt and dust, and the rabbits and the birds were just going for dear life. They was trying to stay ahead of that. And it was riding about, I'd say 12, 15 feet off the ground. And it looked like you could walk back in under, and it wouldn't bother you. But we got up by the basement door so we could bounce in like a prairie dog when danger comes. So it's a good thing we were standing close to it, because if we'd had to went very far, we never could have found the door. Because when that hit and rode over us, you couldn't see your hand out there at all. And there was so much dust in the air that you just could not hardly get a kerosene light to burn.
We had a Chevrolet car that had a cloth top and upholstering in the top, and the dirt got in there. It hang down for there was about a half a gallon of dirt in there when I finally cut a hole in the upholstery to let it out.
Yeah, it just hung in there, oh brother. And her windowsills
The
would
dust was just like flour.
Okay, then after President Roosevelt was elected, he started a bunch of farm programs. Were you in on that?
I was in on the old AAA. That was hog corn allotment, and I forget what the name of it was. It was allotment, agriculture allotment administration is what the AAA stood for. And we had to go out and check the cornfields, see how much corn people had planted, and then count their hogs, see how many hogs they had. They'd turn their hogs in, and we'd have to go out and count them. There's Ralph Tuttle and Austin Kepley and Stanley Eastham, and Glenn Clark, and Alvin Walters, and Dan Ray and Booker Hawes and I, a bunch of us worked on it. One time during the 30s there, we had a program. There's four of us, Ed Taylor, county agent, and I, and Booker Hawes, and Dan Ray went to Garden City to a meeting of 22 counties. There was some fellows from Washington, D.C. came out to see how much need there was for to allow people money to farm with. And we was 3 hours getting to Garden City the way the dust was blowing. And every county was represented, 22 counties. They gave us 22 cents an acre to lift up our ground, chisel it.
Okay, I believe you were also in on the beginning of the Farm Bureau in Grant County?
Yes, Farm Bureau and Extension. They, finally at Manhattan they decided that they needed to separate Farm Bureau and Extension because there was some of the insurance companies they accused the Farm Bureau of using budgeted money in the county to run the Farm Bureau insurance, which we didn't. We had our office in conjunction with the Farm Bureau and Extension, but we had 300 members and our dues was $5. That was $1,500. That was Farm Bureau money, and the other $1,500 was budgeted from the county budget. So really we wasn't using any of their money. But the law said that we had to separate, which we did, and then we started up an office of our own, the Farm Bureau, over in the old, what used to be the old Farmers Bank on the west side of the street. John Alford owned it at the time.
But both offices, both the Farm Bureau and Extension was run from the same office until we
separated. They also told us that we couldn't use any of the money we had budgeted to set up our new farm organization there. But Joe Shalane, our county agent, had went to Korea, and our Connie McGinnis, our home administration agent, had resigned and went to old Mexico. So we had a little money left over, and we had enough money to last our Farm Bureau on out and Extension. But we decided we'd take $1,500 or $1,100 of the money and open up our office. Ray Miller and Arthur Williams and A.D. Harmon and I went to Salina and bought our office equipment. But before we went, we drawed up a contract with our lawyer, H.W. Stubbs, and turned it over to the office in Manhattan. We told them what we was going to do, and that we was going to leave all the office equipment over in the office, but we was going to buy new equipment, which we did, and we was the only one of the 105 counties in Kansas that done that. The rest of them said they told them that they couldn't do that, and they believed them, but we didn't believe them.
Okay. Now, Irene, you're a charter member of which EHU?
Prairie Star.
And can you tell me who were some of the other founding members?
Well, Loretta Williams was, and Sue Eastham, and Margaret Humphrey, and I think Norma Anderson, but evidently she wasn't, because she wasn't a charter member, but she did join us later on. And later on the next year, well, Mary Alice Murphy and Norma and Myrtle Hayner and Bessie Puckett. I don't, and Mrs. Lawrence Ward, and there may be somebody, Maggie Lee, Mrs. Rowley, she joined us later on. But most of the charter members, there wasn't very many of us there that day that we organized, but several of them joined later on, and we, at one time, and we always had a dinner, and we could get our kids ready and fix a covered dish and be there by 10 o'clock. And now we still have our lunches at noon, but it hurries us to get there by 11:45.
And no kids.
And no kids, they're all gone. So that's, I guess, how much we've slowed down. Of course, sometimes we don't let out till 4 or 5 o'clock now, and then we had to get our meeting over with by 3:30 or by 3, because most of us had to go pick up kids. So we just added on one end, and because we had to get going.
Okay, I know that you were active in Grange work, and we've not had anybody talk about the Grant County Granges. So could you tell us which one you belong to and why you belong to it?
Well, the Grange that we belong to, it was organized in, well, Harold is 52, what is it? 51. And he was just a little fella, and we had a little stage about this high, and he could hardly get up and down over that, so I would say it's been about 40 or 50 years ago, because he could hardly get up and down on that stage. And he never wanted to sit still, so he kept a lot of them entertained, because everybody would grab him and make over him, but I couldn't do nothing with him, and nobody wanted me to let him, but he went to Grange, and that's when we organized.
Alvin, what was the name of it? And
Shockey Grange.
why was it organized?
Well, the Grange was organized sometime in the 1800s, the national and state Granges, and it was to educate the farmers, and it was kind of a fraternal organization. The men and women both belonged to it, a little like the Rebecca Lodge. And in the 1800s, the Grange was supposed to have, and did, I guess, was instrumental in organizing rural delivery, mail delivery. We had the Shockey Grange up northwest, then there was the Golden Grange down southwest at Golden, and the Friendship Grange was the first Grange in the county. It was up northeast in the Moyer neighborhood. The Cimarron Grange was down on the river. Alvin Walters and Hawkins and a few of them people down there. Then we had a Pomona Grange. It was a Grange of all 4 of them. And we met in Ulysses, the Pomona Grange. I was master of subordinate Grange and Pomona Grange both at one time.
Was primarily for the purpose of improving the farmers' life?
Yes, and educating the farmers.
We had a legislative committee that met with the legislators in both Kansas and in Washington, D.C. And it was a social deal too. And that's a big thing that we look forward to, because you could go and see your neighbors, and we always had programs. We had our serious meeting, and then we always had some kind of a program. And then we always eat afterwards, because we always had to eat. And it was quite an interesting, because at one time we had over 60 members. And we didn't have too big a meeting place, but we managed to get in there.
We met in the old Shockey schoolhouse. It wasn't very large. But during the 30s, so many people, our members, moved out of the country, went to Washington, Oregon, California, and other places. We get down to where we didn't have hardly enough members to hold Grange, so we dissolved, and we joined the Cimarron Grange at that time. And the Shockey Grange, and Tuttles and Harmons and some of those folks down there belonged to, they folded up.
That was the Golden one,
Golden.
not the Shockey.
Yeah.
Okay.
That got it wrong. It was Golden. Place. They didn't belong it to Shockey. But when they did dissolve down there, Harmon's had moved to town by that time, so they joined our Shockey Grange.
Okay.
Why don't we take a break?
Let's continue on here with some of the other activities that you were involved in, Alvin. I think we wanted to mention something about the high school auditorium. Were you in on that?
Roxy Powell, the Methodist minister, and I circulated a petition in Sherman Township to bring it to a vote of the people in the 30s. And after, I don't know who circulated a petition in the south part of the county, but we brought it to a vote, and it was voted in, and then it was built with WPA labor. And they told us at the time, the people that did object to our petition said it was too big a building, we didn't need that big a building. But it finally became obsolete, and at the time we built it, it was the best auditorium in southwest Kansas, and a lot of the tournaments was held here.
Now, I know you served on the fair board, the county fair board. Were you in on the beginning of the fair?
Well, I suppose I was. I wasn't on the board at the first, but I worked all the time on it. They first started the fair up here in town. And it was, the rodeo was over on Main Street, out by where Marshall Walker lives, on the east side of the street. Then we moved the rodeo up to about where the trees and the parking lot are out there now. And finally we moved it down to where it is at this time. And I don't know who all was on the board there for several years before I got on, but when I was on, it was Ernie Mann and Orrin Reeser, and I can't remember for sure who all.
Well, then you have seen our fair go from being housed in tents put
Right.
up to our fine community building now.
We had a tent, cost us $75 for our first tent, was parked out there west of the 4-H building where the trees are. That's where they had the cattle and hogs and things in this big tent.
Another thing that has turned out to be very important in the development of our community is what started as a city planning board. Why don't you tell us why that happened and how?
Well, the purpose of it was for more orderly expansion of the city. When they jogged Main Street, that's really the first start of it there. To plat out a 5-acre tract, you could only put 2 streets in it and 3 rows of houses. And the new addition up there wanted to put 4 rows of houses, so you had to jog a street over to get 4 rows of houses on a 5-acre tract.
You weren't happy about the way the town was moving.
No, I was out of the city at the time, but under state law they had to be 2 people out of the city within the 3-mile limit to form a planning commission, city planning commission. Later on it was reorganized, and it's now a city and county planning commission. But I think maybe Earl Rogers that run a dry goods store here, a clothing store. I think he might have been the main one that started it back there. Verlin Phillips and I and Earl Rogers and George Daugherty and George Coffey and Cecil Kepley, some of us was the first planning commission. Verlin and I was on 14 years, and I finally had to resign to get off due to health. And but Verlin stayed on another year or 2 after I got off. I guess it was organized about 17 years ago.
All right, we might mention here that you you said you were out of the city limits at this time. Tell us about your place up there, Irene, and describe what you've done with your out of the city limits farm.
Well, when we moved to town, we moved up there in '37 because it was just so dirty out to the farm and a few other things and transportation of kids. And our children would have had to gone over to a schoolhouse north and west of where we lived, which is out here on the highway west of town. And I went to a country school, and I didn't want my kids going to a country school. So we moved to town so they could be entitled to come to town school. And we had 6 acres up there, and we had a little house, and when we was out of the city, we could have our chickens, turkeys, and ducks, and rabbits, and geese, and our milk cows, and our sheep, and our pigs. We could do it pretty much as we pleased, but when they come out and took us into the city, city ordinance says you can't have this, and you can't have that, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. And to reinforce it, they doubled the taxes. So we felt like we couldn't afford that, and we lotted it out, had it surveyed, and sold lots out.
Okay, and who bought 2 of them?
They didn't buy them, we gave them to them.
Okay.
And to help our children, we gave each one of them a lot, told them if they wanted to live that close to us, why, we would give them a lot apiece. So they built a house on them, and we watched our 6 little grandkids growing up across the street from us, which we enjoyed all through the years. And worked out real good, so I got to see them almost every day. Of course, I got into trouble with them too, just like their parents did, but whenever they got into trouble with Grandma, well, it didn't do any good to go home because they were just being more trouble. So they learned that if they got into trouble with me, they just better tough it out, because not going to tell Mom and Dad about it. But it was quite a pleasure to have them growing up that close. You really got to know them. And not many grandparents, some, not all, get to see their grandchildren grow up. Now we're watching the great-grandchildren grow up. We have 2 little great-grandchildren living right north of us. And those grandkids and those great-grandkids has really educated us, along with it. And they sure are a big consolation and a big enjoyment to us. And they come in with some pretty big, wild stories. Boy, they can really tell them.
You have a family custom that I think is interesting, something about pancakes.
On Christmas? Oh, several years ago, we always had pancakes on Sunday morning, and seems as though I don't know much about how my kids fed their kids, because I wasn't around much at mealtime. But it seems as though they didn't have pancakes much, and the kids found out we was going to have pancakes, so they wanted to come over and eat pancakes with us. I said, okay. So they's going to come over and eat pancakes with us on Christmas morning, and when the older folks found out the little folks was coming over and eating pancakes, why, they had to come too. So it just kind of became a tradition that we are still following. But they was going to do the work. And, of course, 7- and 8-year-old kids, you know about how much work they do.
Had a sticky kitchen, huh?
Huh?
You had a sticky kitchen?
Well, I had a sticky kitchen, but they did clean it up pretty good. They thought good to their idea, but we let them have at it. And it still goes on that way. I may make the pancake batter, but they usually bake them and serve them, and we enjoy that. And then they can go and do what they want to the rest of the day, and I usually go to bed.
Okay, I'd like to talk to you about your hobbies and the crafts that you do. And for our viewers, I might add that you had quite a bit to do in shaping up this museum. that you are one of the few expert paper hangers in the county, and you helped paper our little house here. Now tell us about some of the other things that you do. I know you're a talented artist.
Oh, well, it all started, I guess, because I live close to the kids, and I couldn't be at their house all the time, and they didn't want me there. So I created some hobbies and started doing things on my own, so I'd stay at home and keep my nose out of their business a little bit. And so we just kind of went from there, and we formed a leather tooling club and a copper tooling, well, we did copper tooling and leather tooling in the club, and several things, and there were several members that belonged to that, and we enjoyed it, and from there we just went on, and I don't know what happened to us, why we disbanded, but we did. And but in that club we took up textile painting, which is painting on material with tubes of paint. And I was a demonstrator for that for 4 or 5 years, and I got tired of it. And along come a chance to take up oil paintings, and we had an artist come in here that gave us basic lessons. And most of those things, when I got them mastered, I wanted to do something else. But I haven't mastered oil painting yet, so I'm still working at it.
I don't think people ever do they?
Well, one of our teachers said that he'd been painting for about 60 years, and he'd never painted a masterpiece, and he'd never really painted a picture of what there was of things wrong with it. So I guess there's no use of me getting too hepped up about painting a perfect picture, because it's just not going to materialize.
I don't know about perfect, but you paint some very pretty ones.
Well, thank you.
And interesting too. Alvin, what are your hobbies?
Driving a tractor is about all.
Just driving a tractor.
I
Okay.
never had time for hobbies. I'll have to figure out something.
Okay, you're
I
gonna,
retired the first of the year, so I'll have to figure out something.
maybe you'll take up oil painting.
Well, I don't doubt that. I don't know how to, I don't know my colors. I don't know how to mix the colors.
Well, maybe you'll learn. Anyway, it's kind of interesting that you have retired and now you're going to have to find something to occupy yourself, right?
You're right. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's been a real pleasure having you here this morning, and I've enjoyed the visit so much, and I just hope that you find a good hobby.
Thank you.
We've enjoyed being
Glad to be here.